The Life and Death of George Foreman, a story of violence, redemption, and grilled meat. Welcome to Game on Brain, sponsored by OnlineCashUp.com. If you got game on your brain, why not get paid for it? Sports is a multi-billion-dollar business, and there's plenty of money to go around for everyone, not just the players. Whether you're a fanatic, a fan, or simply an occasional viewer, corporations want to know what you think to keep their finger on the pulse of the marketplace, and they're willing to pay for that privilege. So if you're not shy about sharing your opinion on sports and other topics, visit GameandBrain.com/opinions and grab your piece of the pie. While these reenactment stories may be based on true events, any resemblance to a celebrity or public figure is purely coincidental. Any attempts at legal action will be met with non-payment. The rise, fall, and resurrection of a heavyweight legend. All right, folks, buckle up because we're about to dive into the wild, absurd, and somehow inspirational life of George Foreman, a man who went from mugging people in Houston to mugging heavyweight champions, then found God, lost everything, and somehow came back to sell us all a goddamn grill. This isn't just a boxing story. This is a story about reinvention, delusion, and the sheer stubbornness of a man who refused to accept that time was undefeated. Spoiler alert, it still is, but George gave it one hell of a fight. Part 1, From Fifth Ward to Gold Medal, The Making of a Monster. Let's set the scene. Houston, Texas, 1950s. Fifth Ward, or as the locals called it, the Bloody Fifth. This wasn't some quaint neighborhood where kids sold lemonade. Nah, this was the kind of place where if you heard gunshots, you didn't call the cops. You just hoped they weren't aimed at you. Young George was running the streets, dropping out of school, robbing people, basically auditioning for a future as either a prison inmate or a corpse. Then one night, after crawling under a house covered in mud to escape the cops, he saw a Job Corps commercial featuring Jim Brown. George, wait, you're telling me I can leave this hellhole and get 3 meals a day? Sign me the hell up. So off he went, trading street fights for structured meals and, eventually, boxing gloves. And here's the crazy part. The dude was good. Like, scary good. By 1968, he's in Mexico City, winning Olympic gold, waving an American flag like he hadn't been robbing people a few years earlier. That moment? Pure, unfiltered pride. George, later, nothing has come close to that moment. Yeah, because after that, things got complicated. The first reign, a human wrecking ball. Post-Olympics, Foreman turned pro. And let me tell you, this man did not box. He demolished. He wasn't slick. He wasn't fast. He was just a walking, gloved sledgehammer. Opponents, he hit me so hard my eye bone came through my eye from the inside out. Yeah, that's not a typo. That's what happens when George Foreman punches you. Then came Joe Frazier, the champ, the legend, the guy who beat Ollie. And what does Foreman do? He knocks him down 6 times in 2 rounds. Angie Dundee, Ollie's trainer, watching in horror, down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Just like that, George was the baddest man on the planet. And he loved it. George, post-fight, probably you see that sign? It says Sadler. Well, I'm for that too. But then, the rumble in the jungle. The night George met reality. Enter Muhammad Ali. Now, let's be clear, nobody thought Ollie had a chance. Foreman was a monster. Ollie was past his prime. This was supposed to be a slaughter. Howard Cosell, before the fight, this is a disgrace. Ollie is going to get hurt. And for 6 rounds, it looked like he was right. Foreman was pounding Ollie like a heavy bag. Then in round 8, Ollie pulled off the rope-a-dope, let George punch himself out, and BM, knocked him out cold. George later, in denial, the ropes were loose. Someone put something in my water. But deep down he knew. He'd been outsmarted, and it destroyed him. The dark years, from champion to preacher. After losing to Ollie, Foreman spiraled. He lost to Jimmy Young in a fight so brutal he literally thought he was dying in the dressing room afterward. George hallucinating in the locker room. I heard a voice say, "I don't want your money, I want you." Next thing you know, he's born again, giving away cars, preaching on street corners, and refusing to even make a fist for 10 years. Everyone up, George, you good. But then, the comeback, the greatest midlife crisis in sports history. By the late 80s, George was broke. His youth center was draining his cash, and he had a revelation. George, I'll become heavyweight champion again. That'll fix everything. Wife, they're gonna kill you. Kids, Dad, you're 38 and weigh 300 pounds. But George didn't care. He came back, fought a bunch of tomato cans, and somehow, through sheer willpower and a refusal to accept reality, got a title shot against Evander Holyfield in 1991. He lost, but damn, he made it competitive. Then, in 1994, at 45 years old, he knocked out Michael Moore. Part 2. The Grill, the Glory, and the Man Who Outlasted Time. From punching bags to pocketing millions, the unlikeliest second act. So, George Foreman just pulled off the impossible. He became heavyweight champion of the world again at 45 years old, 2 decades after everyone thought his career was dead and buried. What does a man do after that? Retire? Nah. Disappear into obscurity? Hell no. George Foreman did what any self-respecting, twice-born-again, former street thug-turned-champion would do. He sold us all a goddamn grill. And not just any grill. The George Foreman lean mean, fat-reducing grilling machine, a product so ubiquitous that at one point, it was in 1 out of every 5 American households. Let that sink in. More people owned a George Foreman grill than knew who the current heavyweight champion was. But how do we get here? How does a man go from knocking out legends to hawking countertop appliances? Buckle up, because this is where the story gets even wilder. The birth of a grill empire, and why it almost didn't happen. After beating Moorer, George could have just faded away. He'd already cemented his legacy. But this man had bills to pay, namely his youth center, which was bleeding money. So, when an appliance company approached him about endorsing a grill, he didn't just say yes, he demanded equity. George, probably you want my name on this thing? Then I own part of it. Genius move. Because while most athletes take a quick paycheck for endorsements, George bet on himself, and it paid off big time. The grill was a smash hit. Why? 1. It was simple. Press meat between 2 hot plates, fat drips off, boom, healthy eating. 2. George's face was on it. And let's be real, nobody says no to that smile. 3. The name was ridiculous. Lean mean, fat-reducing grilling machine. How could you not buy it? By 1999, the grill had made over $200 million. By 2009, over $1 billion. George didn't just endorse a product. He became the product. And the best part? He didn't even like grilling. George, later admitting, I never grilled before this. I just liked the paycheck. Part 8. The Final Bell, Retirement, Legacy, and the Myth of George Foreman. By the late 90s, George was done with boxing. He'd fought 81 times, won 76, knocked out 68 men, and became champion twice. Once as a young killer, once as an old, lovable grandpa with a gut and a dream. But here's the thing about George Foreman. He wasn't just a boxer. He was a brand. TV star? Yep, George Foreman's Grill Time. George Foreman's All-Star Boxing. Author? Sure, by George, God in My Corner. Pitchman? Oh hell yeah, Doritos. Meineke, even his own energy drink. He even named all 5 of his sons George because, well, why not? Interviewer, oh why? George, so they'd never get a bill collector's call thinking they were me. Brilliant. The death of George Foreman, figuratively, not literally. So, did George Foreman ever really die? Yes, twice. 1. The first death, in Zaire, 1974, when Ali knocked him out and shattered his invincibility. 2. The second death, in the 80s, when he was a broke preacher nobody took seriously. But both times, he came back. And that's the real lesson of George Foreman's life. You're never done until you decide you're done. He went from street thug, Olympic champ, brutal knockout artist, humbled preacher, laughable comeback story, heavyweight champ again, retired boxer, grill mogul. Most people get 1 act. George got 4. Final round. Why we'll never forget Big George. George Foreman's legacy isn't just about boxing. It's about reinvention, about refusing to be defined by failure, about proving that it's never too late, whether you're 45 and winning a title or 70 and still selling grills. And let's be real, when he actually passes away someday, which at this rate might be never, they'll probably just find him in his backyard, flipping burgers on his own grill, grinning like he knows a secret the rest of us don't. Final thought. George Foreman didn't just beat opponents. He beat time. And if that's not the most badass thing in sports history, I don't know what is. Now go cook a burger on his grill and think about that. And that's the end. Until George inevitably comes back as a cyborg in 2045. Thanks for keeping game on your brain. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Now that you've heard our opinions, it's time to get paid for yours. Visit the online cash shop at gameonbrain.com/opinions and get your ass in the game.
Thanks for keeping game on your brain. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.